And here's what's happening in North America. Yesterday, the House Financial Services Committee posed stern questions to John Stumpf, the CEO of U.S. bank, Wells Fargo.
Members of Congress questioned John Stumpf as an occasion to declare the following: that capitalism and the free markets have become indefensible. Wells Fargo is too large to regulate. Its employees require unionization, and that attempts to regulate Wells Fargo have failed.
Formal actions against Wells Fargo, including a $185 million fine earlier this month, are in response to a fraudulent form of cross-selling, in which Wells Fargo allegedly opened fee-generating accounts without customers' authorization, in order to meet the bank's sales quota.
There is no word from Canadian authorities whether or not they intend to scrutinize the big banks of Canada for their fee-generating accounts which, although opened with clients' approval, nonetheless constitute a continual drain on customers' savings through a constellation of arbitrary fees, which have become an integral part of the Big Five's annual profits.
Congress is hinting at greater regulation of big American banks like Wells Fargo. Yet in Canada, where regulation is greater, a kind of institutionalized corruption has resulted. This is the standard practice of pilfering clients' accounts via monthly bank fees, service charges, transaction fees, and non-sufficient funds penalties as high as $40, levied even against electronic transactions, which are reversed and penalized automatically at no real cost to the bank.
What is the typical cost of these fees to Canadian citizens?
There is potential here for a single client to pay hundreds of dollars a year for the privilege of depositing his or her paycheck onto the bank's balance sheet.
But how can Canadians accept this notion that the banks, rather than paying them fair interest on their deposits, charge them fees instead?
Banks argue that the cost of electronic automation must be passed on to the customer. When the big banks stopped paying clients meaningful interest on savings accounts in the 1980s, the head of the horse had left the barn, and the tail of the horse has emerged. Excessive bank fees, including an equivalent interest rate levied against some account overdrafts, as high as 20%.
I can see how the shareholders would be happy with this profit-generating scheme that poses no risk to the banks. But how can the Government of Canada, known for its high levels of regulation, permit Canadian citizens to be taxed by the big banks?
Canada needs a parliamentary commission to investigate banks skimming clients' deposits via the ever-expanding constellation of bank fees. However, Canadians do not have a Minister for Consumer and Corporate Affairs. This post was abolished in 1995, its duties handed off to the Minister of Industry, and of course, in keeping with the apparent war against tradition, this cabinet position has also disappeared. Now, as far as who, if anyone, in Cabinet watches Canada's banks in 2016, your guess is as good as mine. Likely the entire oversight of Canada's banks has been delegated to an unelected bureaucracy, which is less likely to fight on behalf of ordinary citizens, whose interests would be better upheld by a body of elected representatives, like, for example, the House Financial Services Committee in America.
Politics aside, are you stating opposition to the idea of a bank generating profits?
No, but I would like to see banks profit from their own investments, leveraged by their deposits on record, meaning by clients' accounts which are not diminished by excessive fees, and profit by earning interest on actual loans, which are a form of wealth creation that benefits the overall economy.
But surely the Canadian banks are already doing this.
Yes, and they should limit themselves to that business model, instead of their current practice of lining their coffers with bits of their clients' paychecks. $10 here, $1 there, $40 whenever they can. This de facto tax on clients' accounts diminishes the spending and savings power of Canada's citizens.
We will be observing a period of radio silence, and then continue today's broadcast at a later time.
This is Radio Free, Kanada, Amerika.